Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about basically my mid-year check-in. So we're going to be talking about my favorite books this year, my most disappointing books this year, my least favorite books this year, the most surprising book this year, and then also some books that I still need to get into in this upcoming rest of the year. So I'm definitely like a month behind on this, which is totally fine. Totally fine. I did get tagged in this video by Ashley. Her book tag name is AshleyHeartsReading, which I think is so cute. So thank you so much for the tag, Ashley. I'm very excited to film this video and just like ramble all about all the books that I've read so far this year. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So I'm gonna be looking at my laptop here that's in my lap just to like refer to some stats and stuff. I track all of my reading and books and stuff that I've been reading, my ratings and all that on Goodreads. My Goodreads is linked down in the description box as well as on my channel, so you can check that out if you want to. I love being friends with you guys so I can see what you're reading and it helps me with the inspo too. That is where I'm going to be getting all of these stats from. Total this year so far, today is July 21st when I'm filming this, and I have read 67 books so far, which I think is totally fair and pretty much like comparable to what I read last year. Last year I read, like I said, 109 books, but I don't count any type of DNFs or anything like that. I just don't put them on there because I didn't finish them. It doesn't really like matter to me. I don't take it that seriously, but I just don't count them. So the first question or the first book topic in this tag is my favorite book of the year so far. This is honestly such a hard decision because I have had well over 15 5-star reads this year. Like I've had such a good reading year so far that it's impossible honestly to choose my favorite book. I have like definitely a top 10 books so far this year. And what I decided to do is essentially not count any of the series because the Bridge Kingdom series is my favorite series this year. I'm reading the Witcher series right now, and that's one of my favorite series this year. Like so many. So my favorite book this year definitely has to be The Handmaid's Tale. I read this year, but it almost feels like I read this years and years and years ago because it just hit so hard and it has stuck with me for so long since finishing it that it almost feels like I read this forever ago. And this is just like one of those soul books that is going to stay with me forever. I'm so happy that I read it. I'm so mad that I took so long to read it, but honestly everything happens at the right time in my opinion. So I just guess it was the right time for me to read it this year, and I am very touched by this book. It definitely left me with a lot of thoughts and a lot of things to think about and a lot of feelings, and I don't know, I just feel like this is such an important book for a lot of people to read, whether you're a girl, a guy, whoever. If you're a human being, I think you should read this book just because I think that so many important topics are talked about in this book. And honestly, Margaret Atwood's writing is phenomenal. Like this book gave almost like suspenseful thriller vibes to the point, like to the extent that like I didn't want to put it down. I started this book and I read it in that one sitting. It's not very long at all, but it was just that book that there's so many questions and what ifs and it could go in so many different ways that it was the one that I just had to hang on to and finish it and like hang on until the end. And yeah, it was just so good. This is an amazing book and I love it. I love Margaret Atwood's writing. I have another book by her that I want to read soon, and then I actually have the second book in this duology. I think it's called The Testament. Yeah, The Testaments, that I also want to read soon. So this by far is one of my top books this year, and so this is like one of the standalones that I absolutely love. I guess it's not a standalone because she did write a second book, but whatever. And then the second question is a book that hurt you in the best way. I think I read a lot of books that hurt me this year. Some of these, like multiple of these books that I'm gonna mention can fit into this category, but the one that is in the forefront of my mind right now, probably because I read it recently, has to be Fairy Tale. It just has to be this book. I don't even know how to process or like form words around this book because it encompasses so many different things. There's so many different types of genres in this book. There's like romance over centuries, gods, monsters, magic, witches, paranormal activity, like just so many different things. But ultimately it is just a love story that reaches beyond the ages. It's incredibly beautiful, the storytelling and the journey that these characters go through. She's a chunky book, and so you get so much of that story and background. Originally going into this book, it was definitely intimidating because it's so long. I just didn't really know what to expect, but towards the end, I was crying. I felt like my soul physically hurt, my chest hurt. That's just how you know a book really touches you, and it took me by surprise, and it hurt me so good. I have been recommending this book to everybody. I do not think it's going to be for everybody at all. I definitely don't think that this book is going to be for everybody, but I think the right person who picks this up is going to stick with them for a very long time. And I guess that person was me, because I loved it. I had such a fantastic time. Now this book is the indie published version. I was gifted the e-arc version of this book because it got traditionally published, or got picked up by a trad publisher, and I think it gets released in August, like the end of August, so you'll be able to read it at that point. And I definitely think you need to at least give it a try, because it was just that phenomenal. Now, the book that I don't enjoy talking about on the internet, because I feel like I'm the one that's the problem, but the next book is the biggest disappointment of this year, and I've talked about this a couple times already on my channel and on my Instagram, but unfortunately Shield of Sparrows was the biggest disappointment for me. And I honestly had like such high expectations for this book, and that might have been its downfall. It was just so hyped up, and honestly it's like the most gorgeous book I've ever seen. Like this is the most gorgeous book that I have on my shelves by far. And so I was very excited to read this, and just the vibes that it's giving with like the greenery and like the interior here. It looks like there are like little forest fairies in the woods. I don't know. I had very high expectations for this book, and the last part of this book was good. The last 150 pages was good, because that's when things started actually happening. But this book is over 400 pages, and I can tell you that like truly nothing different happened within the first 300 pages of this book. You initially are in your female main character's point of view, and she's a princess, and she's kind of like disobedient, or not even disobedient, but just like kind of going against the grain. And we love that, but she eventually meets the male main character, and it kind of just like stops there. Like, we know that this male main character has a deep chuckle and I think green eyes, but that's literally all we know about the male main character until like page 350. And then all of a sudden we get like vomited on all this information within one conversation between two characters. It all comes out. And within those first 300 pages, all they're doing is like a quest after quest after quest after quest. During those quests, the same thing happens. Like a lot of repetition and stuff. Like they're fighting these monsters in the world. They get to a place and then the monsters come and they fight them. And they get to a place and the monsters come and then they fight them. And all we know is like, oh, he deep chuckles and she sees his green eyes turn more green. Then we're like, here's all this information. This is what it's all about. And then we have to wait for the second book. And for me, hey guys, Editing Alex. I just wanted to reiterate that this is 100% my opinion, and I know that there are so many people out here that love this book, and I think that is so good. I just see myself going on a rampage here and kind of like on a ramble, and I just really want to reiterate that these are my opinions, and I'm very happy if you love this book. It just wasn't for me. But if you keep watching, I talk about how I am excited to get into the second book to see if things kind of resolve and things kind of like balance out a little bit more for me. So yes, that is all I wanted to say. That's just not what I enjoy. I want to be given little Easter eggs throughout the story and not even change scenery, but just have consistent things happening and unfold throughout the story so it's well balanced, so that my little reader brain can stay engaged and feel like I'm getting to know these people on a deeper level throughout each page. And I just felt like it was very stagnant in the beginning, and it just was unfortunate. And also, just one little nitpicky thing is the dialogue between the characters just felt like super modern, when this is like a setting way back when in the old elven time, you know what I mean? And that just immediately didn't hit right. And it just didn't do it for me. And I feel bad because I know a lot of people really, really love this book, and I think that's great, but it just didn't hit for me. And I will be reading the second book because I need to know if it's me or if it's the book. So I'll be curious to see how I feel about it. But this unfortunately was the biggest disappointment this year. And our next question is the biggest surprise read that I had this year. And this time I have 2 books because I can't pick one. So the first one I've definitely talked about on, I know, my Instagram, but it is The 5 Wishes of Mr. Murray McBride. This little treat of a book, and it's actually a series, so there's 3 books. I've read the first 2 so far. This book follows a 100-year-old man as he goes through life after recently losing his long-term wife to Alzheimer's. You enter this book, which is the first one, on his birthday, on his 100th birthday, and he's basically trying to find a reason to continue living after he loses his wife. He goes on to meet somebody, a character who's very charming, who's going through health difficulties and is also struggling to kind of like find a reason to live. And they meet each other and they go on these little adventures and they meet different people, and very traumatic, sad, devastating things happen. I cried multiple times throughout this book. Cried like a baby. Cried like I've never cried before while reading a book. I just couldn't stop. It was just a waterfall of tears coming out of my eyes, and I couldn't do anything about it. And it's just because of the truly just realistic things that these people are going through, and how like you could even imagine like what's going on in their brain and what they're going through. It's just, I guess the way that the author wrote it and explained it to you as a reader, presented it to you as a reader, you could picture it, you know, and you felt it. And that was so special. And what surprised me so much about this is I had never heard of this book before until I just went to Barnes & Noble one day for just a walkabout the bookstore day, and I saw it on the table and I read the back, and I already knew that that's something that I kind of wanted to read at the moment. So I bought it and I took it home and I read it and I cried and loved it, fell in love with it. And so I literally went back to the bookstore the next day and I bought the next 2 books in the series because the characters are just so special. Yeah, so if that sounds like something that you may like, I highly recommend this book series. I think that I have like pages dog-eared where there are some quotes and stuff, just because that's how much I want to go back and reread it. Eventually I'm gonna have this book on my shelf for a really long time. It's a really special little book, and it definitely surprised me. I was not expecting it to enter my life, and I'm so glad that it did. The second book that I have that was one of the biggest surprises for me this year is The Amalfi Curse. Now, this book was not on my radar like at all. Neither was Sarah Pinner, who's the author. And Sarah Pinner is actually the author of The Lost Apothecary, which I actually read recently. I read this month. It wasn't as good as this, but it was definitely very good and gave the same vibes as this. This one was a surprise for me because it wasn't on my radar. It was also another random bookstore pickup. And it just seems like a short little, you know, fun literary fiction that has a little bit of like a mystery element to it. I think I could relate a lot to it because the woman, or the female main character in this book, is a researcher. And she's basically following in her father's footsteps, researching his, you know, he was basically trying to find this lost treasure in this old shipwreck on the Amalfi Coast. And while she's there, she's kind of discovering this old curse and following this old ancestry line of witches and like connecting to these witches and stuff. And you've got like dual timelines, so you're jumping back and forth. It was just such a good read from the very beginning. Like the first 3 pages I remember, I just started it really quickly one night. I wasn't going to dive too far into it, but I started the first couple pages and I didn't want to put it down because immediately I could tell that I guess I just clicked really well with her writing. And then just like the scene that she puts you in the very beginning is super captivating. Yeah, this was such a joy of a little book. And like I said, I read her other book after this one because I just had to read more of her writing. And I'm very happy I did because I definitely will be picking up every single book that she produces, 100% for sure. So yeah, that was another very surprising book for me this year. Now, we're going to talk about the books that I still need to get into at the end of this year. The books that I still need to get to by the time this year rolls around. So I already know off the top of my head one that is going to be released at the end of this year, or I think in November. So we've got the third book in the Empire of the Vampire series. We've got the fourth book in the Legacy series by Melissa K. Rorick. Those two are probably my most highly anticipated books that are coming out towards the end of this year, and I will be reading as soon as they come out. And then I also had written down a 25 and 2025 to read, and so I'm gonna pull it up and see like what we've done so far. Will of the Many, Wuthering Heights, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Sirens, and Bury Our Bones. Those are kind of like the top ones that I can think of right now that I am going to have to read by the end of this year, 100%. Wuthering Heights, Will of the Many, and Dracula are on my 2025 to read in 2025, but also is City of Brass, The Ballad of Falling Dragons, Burn of the Everflame, the rest of the Wave King series, A Curse Carved in Bone, which I do have, Slewfoot, Servant of the Earth, which I do have, and then A Study of Drowning, which I actually just unhauled, because I don't think I'm gonna get to that one. And then the rest of them I've actually already read. So I am about 50-50 on my 25 to read in 2025. So I'll read you the rest of them that I have read so far, which is Part of Your World, Heavenly Bodies, which was a DNF, Ember in the Ashes, which I finished the series, The Night and the Moth, Girl in the Tower, which is the Bear and the Nightingale series, Metal Slinger, Rebel Witch, Anxious People, It Lasts Forever and Then Is Over, Don't Let the Forest In, The Handmaid's Tale, and then X-Files. Those are the ones that I've read so far out of that list. So we're doing really well actually to be halfway through the year and have read 50% of that list. Yeah, that is my mid-year book freak out challenge, and I want to do another one at the end of this year to kind of see where we're at, revisit the 25 to read in 2025 list, and then see if I still feel the same way about some of these books, especially like Fairytale and, you know, Shield of Sparrows. So yeah, thank you guys so much for being here and listening to me ramble about all of my favorite books this year and all my least favorite books this year and plans for the rest of this year. I hope to see you very soon next weekend on Saturday, and I hope you're having a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.